In the dead of night, 900 American sailors are floating in shark-infested waters, and back home, nobody even knows they're missing. It's one of the most gut-wrenching stories in U.S. Navy history, and it starts with one of the most important secret missions of World War II. This is the story of the USS Indianapolis. Picture late July, 1945. The war in the Pacific has dragged on for nearly 4 years, grinding through island after island, and the United States is racing to bring it to an end. A heavy cruiser named the USS Indianapolis is given an assignment so classified that even most of her own crew have no idea what they're carrying below decks. Not weapons in the traditional sense. Not troops packed into bunks for the next invasion. Something far more powerful and far more secret: components for the atomic bomb. The Indianapolis carries enriched uranium and critical parts of the bomb that will soon be known as Little Boy. Racing across the open Pacific at incredible speed, her crew trusting their orders without knowing the full weight of what sits in her hold. On July 26, 1945, she arrives at the island of Tinian and delivers her cargo. Mission complete. The ship that carried it slips back into the vast anonymity of the wartime Pacific. Her job done, her secret still intact. Within days, that very payload will be assembled into the weapon that changes the course of history at Hiroshima. But the Indianapolis's story doesn't end with a quiet, triumphant delivery. It's about to take a devastating turn, one that would become the U.S. Navy's single greatest loss of life from one ship in the entire history of the service. After completing her secret mission, the Indianapolis leaves Guam on July 28, 1945, heading toward the island of Leyte in the Philippines, where her crew is set to begin training exercises. It's meant to be a routine transit, the kind of unremarkable voyage sailors make 1,000 times over the course of a war. No one aboard has reason to think anything is wrong. The mission that mattered has already been completed. This is simply the ship moving on to her next assignment. But lurking beneath the waves, unseen and unheard, is a Japanese submarine, the I-58, commanded by Machitsura Hashimoto. Just after midnight on July 30, 1945, 81 years ago today, the submarine fires a spread of torpedoes into the darkness. 2 of them slam into the Indianapolis. The damage is catastrophic and immediate. The explosions rip open the bow and ignite fuel tanks and powder magazines, sending fire and force tearing through the forward part of the ship. Within minutes, the ship is listing hard, flooding fast, and going dark, the power failing as seawater floods compartment after compartment. In just 12 minutes, barely enough time for the men aboard to process what's happening, let alone escape, the USS Indianapolis rolls over and sinks beneath the Pacific, disappearing into water that, moments before, had been calm and unremarkable. Of the nearly 200 men aboard, hundreds go down with the ship in those first horrifying minutes, trapped below decks or pulled under before they can reach the rails. But roughly 900 sailors manage to escape into the water, many without life rafts, clinging instead to kapok life jackets, wooden debris, or, for some, nothing at all but each other. Bobbing in the dark ocean, watching the silhouette of their ship vanish beneath the surface, they believe rescue is coming soon. It's the natural assumption. You radio a distress call, or someone notices you're overdue and help arrives. They have no idea what's about to unfold. Here's the part of this story that still leaves people stunned today. Nobody comes looking for them. Due to wartime protocols at the time, the Navy did not flag or investigate ships that failed to arrive at their destination on schedule. So when the Indianapolis doesn't show up at Leyte, no alarm is raised, no search begins. Somewhere a schedule simply goes unfulfilled and no one connects it to a ship lost at sea. The survivors are simply out there, alone, drifting in the open ocean, hundreds of miles from the nearest landfall and completely unaware that no one is coming to look for them. For men who had just escaped a sinking ship, that realization that help wasn't already on its way would have been almost as devastating as the sinking itself. What follows is 4 to 5 days of unimaginable suffering. The men are scattered across the water in loose groups, some clinging together for whatever comfort and safety numbers might offer, some drifting alone, gradually separated by current and wind. The tropical sun scorches them by day, with no shade, no relief, nothing but open horizon in every direction. Salt water blisters their skin, working into cuts and wounds until simply being in the water becomes its own kind of torment. Fuel oil coats their bodies and burns their eyes, a thick residue from the sinking that clings to skin and hair and makes every breath near the surface a struggle. They have almost no fresh water, and desperate men who give in to drinking seawater begin hallucinating, some turning delirious, some turning on each other in the grip of thirst and exhaustion. Dehydration and exposure claim lives day by day quietly, as the group that started at roughly 900 grows smaller with each passing hour. And then there are the sharks. Drawn by the chaos of the sinking, the blood in the water, and the sheer number of people stranded in one place, oceanic white-tip sharks begin circling the survivors almost immediately. Over the days that follow, they return again and again, patient and relentless, working the edges of the scattered groups. Men disappear beneath the surface in ones and twos, sometimes in view of their terrified shipmates, who can do nothing but watch and wait to see who is next. To this day, historians consider what happened to the crew of the USS Indianapolis the deadliest shark attack event ever recorded involving humans. Survivors would later describe watching the water around them, waiting, wondering who would be next, a kind of horror that stretched on not for minutes, but for days. 4 days pass, then 5. The men are running out of strength, running out of hope, and running out of time. Every hour without rescue is another hour of sun, salt, thirst, and fear, and the line between survival and loss grows thinner with each passing tide. And then, almost by pure accident, salvation arrives. On August 2, 1945, a Navy pilot named Lieutenant Wilbur Chuck Gwynn is flying a routine anti-submarine patrol high above the Pacific. He's not looking for the Indianapolis as far as the Navy knows. There's nothing to look for, no missing ship on anyone's radar. But from the air, he spots something strange, an oil slick spreading across the water, and then, almost unbelievably, dozens of heads bobbing in the open ocean below. He radios it in immediately, and within hours, planes and ships are racing to the scene from wherever they can be spared. One pilot, Lieutenant Adrian Marks, makes an extraordinary call. Flying a PBY Catalina seaplane, he decides not to wait for surface ships to arrive. He lands his aircraft directly on the open ocean, against standard procedure, to begin pulling survivors from the water himself. By the time his plane is full, with no more room inside, he's tied more men to the wings with parachute cord, refusing to leave anyone behind just because the fuselage had run out of space, keeping them from slipping back into the sea while further help closed in. Rescue ships arrive through the night and into the following day, pulling survivors from waters that had shown them nothing but cruelty for nearly a week. In the end, fewer than 320 of the roughly 195 men who had been aboard the USS Indianapolis are found alive. It remains, to this day, the largest single loss of life at sea in the history of the United States Navy from one ship. The tragedy didn't end when the survivors came home, either. Captain Charles B. McVeigh Roman III, who survived the sinking, was controversially court-martialed later that year, one of the only commanders in the entire war to face court-martial for the loss of his ship to enemy action. For decades, he carried the weight of blame that many historians, and many of his own surviving crewmen, believed he never deserved. It wasn't until the year 2000 that the U.S. Congress formally exonerated him, after survivors themselves campaigned for decades to clear his captain's name, a final act of loyalty from men who had lived through the worst days of their lives alongside him. Here's what makes this story almost impossible to fully comprehend. The very same ship that endured one of the worst disasters in naval history had, just days earlier, completed one of the most important secret missions of the entire war, delivering the components that would help end it. The bomb the Indianapolis helped carry to Tinian was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, just days after her sinking. Days after that, the war was over. The men of the Indianapolis never got to see the mission they died for reach its full purpose. Many of them never even knew what they had been carrying across the Pacific, never knew the significance of the cargo that had shared the ship with them on that final voyage. They simply did their duty, sailed into the dark, and paid an extraordinary price. Today, survivors and historians alike still gather every July 30 to remember the crew of the USS Indianapolis, the men who completed a mission that helped bring World War II to a close, and who endured one of the most harrowing ordeals any sailors have ever faced. Their story is a reminder that behind every headline of history, there are real people who lived through moments almost too incredible to believe. If you found this story as gripping as I did, hit subscribe for more untold moments from American history, the kind of stories that remind us just how much courage it took to build the nation we know today.